This week, to be closer to China, the second Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation was held in Beijing, highlighting China's principles of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits. Thus far, 125 countries and 29 international organizations have signed cooperation agreements with China.
通过“一带一路”的这种建设很多的沿线国家可以搭乘上中国快速发展的这快车。
During President Xi's recent visit to Italy, China and Italy signed an MOU on Belt and Road cooperation. Why is Italy the first G7 country to do so?
We believe with this MOU we can catch up with the lost ground and basically catch up with our European partners.
Nevertheless, with the rapid expansion of China's overseas projects and investments, concerns have been raised. Debt-trap diplomacy, corruption, lack of local engagement, lack of transparency. Are these accusations accurate? Developing countries need Belt and Road projects. How can China improve and optimize them?
To make sure that the projects financed is for benefit for the local people, not benefit to the corrupt officials or current government.
This week, follow China's Belt and Road Initiative to be closer to China. The second Belt and Road Forum on International Cooperation, the second Belt and Road Summit, held in Beijing and attended by 37 heads of state, presents a paradox, a three-sided paradox. On the first side, the Belt and Road Initiative is President Xi Jinping's grand vision to enhance much-needed infrastructure in developing countries, to strengthen regional cooperation, and to improve connectivity on a transcontinental scale. China has 173 cooperation agreements with 125 countries and 29 international organizations. On the second side, China has the most recent experience in building contemporary, efficient infrastructure, and China is making the largest commitment in financing infrastructure. But on the third side, here's the paradox. The Belt and Road Initiative has come under increasing criticism in the Western media and even in some host countries. Here's the blunt charge. China's strategy, critics say, is to create quasi-vassal states for perpetual economic exploitation, putative geopolitical influence, and potential military expansion via a calculated program of excessive debt and domination by Chinese state-owned companies. Does China have a hidden agenda? What does President Xi Jinping say? What should China do? How could something seemingly so good be portrayed as something so bad? We focus on the challenges that China faces to be closer to China. The second Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation was held in Beijing. Attending were 37 heads of state and numerous government and international organizations.
The joint pursuit of the Belt and Road Initiative aims to enhance connectivity and practical cooperation. It's about jointly meeting the various challenges and risks confronting mankind and deliver win-win outcomes and common development.
By the end of March 2019, China had signed 173 cooperation agreements with 125 countries and 29 international organizations. The Belt and Road has expanded from Asia and Europe to include new participants in Africa, Latin America, and the South Pacific. What's the background when the Belt and Road Initiative was first proposed? Articulate from both international and domestic perspectives.
From a short-term perspective, it was in response to a gloomy economic outlook after the international financial crisis. We found, in particular, a new normal of our economic growth, which was an overcapacity for many industries. For instance, our iron and steel construction industries witnessed an oversupply of production capacity. For other developing countries, however, some have just started their industrial and modernization programs, but with backwards infrastructures, in desperate need of production capacity. Thus, the Belt and Road Initiative endeavors to shift our overcapacities to those countries in urgent demand, so that they may share in the fruits of China's economic growth.
The Belt and Road Initiative no longer simply involves countries along the Belt and Road route, but really is a global project. Over the past 5 years, many countries have joined in deepening cooperation with China. Personally, I see it as a remarkable achievement. Another point to take note of is that the BRI coincides with the trend of globalization. Confronting a complicated global economic growth landscape, it is China that proposed the solution on the conceptual front to address the issues facing mankind.
The Belt and Road Initiative aims to enhance regional connectivity and embrace a brighter future. Improving transport infrastructure is essential to substantially reduce trade costs and improve connectivity. A truck driver from Urumqi, Zhang Jian, has spent 2 decades on the road, traveling within China and across the border into Kazakhstan, a central passageway of the ancient Silk Road.
Since the Belt and Road Initiative, Corgos now has a better new terminal with wider roads. Now our company has a pretty large number of orders. There are many people from China doing business with Europe, and road transport could be faster.
China implemented a TIR system in 2018, a global transit system recognized by most Eurasian countries. TIR allows cargo to be sealed at its origin and only be opened upon arrival at its destination. Thus, cargo from China and Europe can reach buyers as quickly as within 1 week, much the same time as transport by air, but at 1/3 the cost. You are head of the Borderland Development Center at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and is it not true that the Belt and Road Project really helps those provinces along the borderland that China has, which are in general the poorer or the developing provinces of China? So in that respect, doesn't BRI projects help in some sense to rebalance the imbalances within China by giving those borderland provinces more opportunities to do projects and develop?
Border regions in China have 2 characteristics. One is underdevelopment, and the other is that they're mostly inhabited by ethnic minorities. A critical task for China is to help these border areas develop and prosper, sharing the dividends of reform with these frontier areas. That is to say, the Belt and Road Initiative also aims to address the uneven regional economic developments within China. At the same time, border region developments could further facilitate sharing the dividends of China's reform with our neighbor countries. Personally, I think we already closely cooperate with Kazakhstan. Our cooperation enjoys 2 unique features. First, we have a China-Kazakhstan Horgos International Frontier Cooperation Center. It's the only cross-border economic cooperation center set up among all our 14 neighboring countries. Second, Kazakhstan tapped into the economic growth potential of the coastal regions and the Pacific by renting ports at Lianyungang, a prefecture-level city in China's Jiangsu province. The Eurasian land bridge also facilitated Kazakhstan's economic activities to reach the Pacific. That is to say, as a landlocked country, Kazakhstan now has access to the ocean by cooperating with China. I believe this clearly represents the crucial aspect of mutually beneficial cooperation between China and its neighbors via the border regions.
Extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits are deemed by China to be the golden principles of the Belt and Road Initiative. Since its inception, Belt and Road has received strong endorsement and warm support from the international community. Thus far, 125 countries and 29 international organizations have signed Belt and Road cooperation agreements with China. Extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits are what China calls the golden principles of the Belt and Road Initiative. So how do you think the Belt and Road Initiative reflects these principles?
Think about together to the synergies of the strategies to dream our joint dreams, the dream together, create harmony. So that's the Confucius idea. At the same time, during the construction process, a different size. It's like in China, Russia, the different size of the railway, and in Africa also. So how to coordinate and the facility of the trade and many international order or international standard differently in the different regions. So jointly consultation. But most importantly, to make sure those projects to benefit all people, not bilaterally, even to other regional countries, your neighbors, and the benefit to the international community.
Belt and Road projects have been expanding rapidly in past years. China has invested in large-scale overseas infrastructure projects, the objective being to help advance international cooperation and enhance the quality of the lives of local people. I understand that. Please give me some specific examples and how they work.
无论是国际
Whether it's international production capacity cooperation or the Belt and Road Initiative, the point is long-term progress. For instance, when we engage in international production capacity cooperation, one crucial aspect is to improve our counterparts' investment environment as well as their infrastructure, which needs to be enhanced bit by bit and step by step.
Actually, most of these BRI projects were composed of infrastructure investments. So we helped a lot of countries improve their infrastructures, public facilities, such as railways, highways, ports, airports, all these things. But apart from these, we should take into account that those countries should have get more investment, more development, in order to be able to pay back those investment debts. That's why we, at the same time, we help all these countries build up a lot of industrial parks. Some Chinese companies are also dislocate their production chain, something like, into those zones. That's why those industrial parks are very useful to helping those countries into industrialization.
It is said that China uses its own companies to construct infrastructure for overseas countries, especially in Africa and Central Asia, so that they lack local engagement. There is minimal local employment. For joint efforts and international cooperation, should it be like that? Should China send its own workers for local construction?
In some cases, as local workers were not as effective as Chinese, so because of the work time very limited, so Chinese companies were forced to send more Chinese workers to push up and to speed up the project. It happened, but very, very rare, because the fact that Chinese workers were is accompanied by more local workers is also a training process, because Chinese engineers, Chinese workers wanting to share experience with local workers. That's why Democratic Republic of Congo, for example, because China is helping Congo Kinshasa carry out a lot of modernization projects as road construction, running water construction. In all these sectors, Chinese workers, Chinese engineers are accompanied by local workers and local engineers, and that's very effective.
During President Xi's recent visit to Italy, China and Italy signed an MOU on Belt and Road cooperation, giving new impetus to China's grand global initiative. I spoke with Michele Geraci, Undersecretary of State at the Italian Ministry of Economic Development, who is responsible for international trade and foreign direct investments. Why did Italy decide to join the Belt and Road Initiative? What's the possible impact on Italy's future development?
Well, the reason why we decided to join the Belt and Road Initiative is as a way to catch up with the lost grounds that appears to be evident when we compare Italian volume of trade with China compared to its European peers. So Italy has been lagging behind trade with China compared to France, compared to the UK, compared to Germany. And this has been because Italy has never had a very good and systemic approach to China. And we believe with this MOU we can catch up with the lost ground and basically catch up with our European partners.
After joining the Belt and Road Initiative, how might Italy deal with its traditional allies?
As usual, because we are allies, but we also compete with each other. Every country in the European Union tries to compete with each other in terms of trade, and this is quite natural. Every country wants to do more exports. Germany is the country that does most of net surplus in Europe, so it is the country that least can complain about trade, terms of trade with China. We have explained to our partners the reason why we want to do it. I think they are understanding it. Once the MOU was public, the content was made public, I think all the initial concerns more or less mostly died out because they realized that this is not a treaty. This is just a way to improve and boost our exports. So the relationship with our allies is getting better now.
With the expansion of China's overseas projects and investments, concerns have been raised, including corruption and excessive debt. However, a newly released analysis by New York's Rhodium Group of 40 debt renegotiations involving China across 24 countries found asset seizures are a very rare occurrence and China's leverage in negotiations is limited. You said that the local government will make money and even profit from Belt and Road projects and that they will continue to invest in the projects which were originally built by China. But as we know, there is great concern about the so-called debt trap, that China wants to control some countries by using excessive debt. How do you react to that?
We should say that most of these BRF projects were launched not only by China, but jointly by China and those recipient countries. And mostly in the case of Sri Lanka and in the case of Pakistan. So to some extent, China is a very useful factor in the local development. But China is not the initiator of those projects. So China responded positively to their request. And China has invested massively in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, in all these countries that help those countries get on a faster train of economic development. And then they will be able to pay back those debts easily in the future because as their economy is improving, it's growing very fast. So they can attract more foreign direct investment. They can attract more tourists. They can attract a lot of activities, and that will allow them to pay back those investment debt.
2017, December 17, and the Indians first put this concept of the debt trap because as a new port, have been taught, usually 10 years you're not making money. But they don't understand because China is 130 countries' #1 trade partner. So Newport itself, difficult to make money, haven't taught. But if you have the value chain, logistics chain, and then you can make money for the companies. So many people don't think from the whole picture of that. And then the Chinese companies like Costco and the commercial limited, they financed more than 25 countries, 75 ports, new ports. So that they connect each other, and then they make money. It's like just give the chicken to you if you eat the chicken with the soup, and then you own that to me. But the Chinese approach, because the focus on the key infrastructure projects, is to give the chicken to you. It's like the chicken have more eggs, and then eggs have more chickens. And then in the future, the X payback to solve your debt.
In China, we know the anti-corruption campaign under President Xi Jinping has made remarkable progress, and it continues relentlessly. Now, in developing countries where China is implementing Belt and Road projects, many are at early stage of development where the senior leaders of the country, their families, the military, bureaucrats are involved in a system of bribes and payoffs. In fact, it's like the normal way of doing business. So China cracked down on corruption in its own country. So should China worry that Belt and Road projects involving Chinese companies in these developing countries involve bribes and payoffs? Is this a problem? And if so, how should China respond?
The Chinese think about the long term. And the Belt and Road project is Saturnian. We cannot just benefit in a short period, but at the cost of the long term of the reputation. So the second Belt and Road Forum, we have 12 forums. One of them is about the clean Silk Road. I think that's the key to focus on that. And also about financial risks control. And also, first time the Chinese Minister of Finance initiated with 26 other countries' financial ministers to sign the guidelines, principles of the Belt and Road projects to make sure that the projects financed is for benefit for the local people, not benefit to the corrupt officials or current government.
Infrastructure projects, by their very nature, are long-term in payback, measured in decades, not in years. Because the Belt and Road Initiative is President Xi Jinping's primary international initiative, is there a danger that Chinese officials will shorten time frames of projects, causing increased risks? A danger of unnatural acceleration to show success too early and therefore put projects at risk.
Every project have their risks and benefits. This should be balanced, not just in those countries, the Belt and Road countries, even in the West. There are risks, political risks, security risks, economic rising everywhere. So we should focus on the long term. Risks should be, in generally, macroly, should be controlled. But the long term, we have the huge investment benefits. So the Belt and Road Initiative, I think, very carefully to select those projects. It's like the Silk Road Fund. We have money, but we don't have so many good quality projects to finance. Even there are huge demand of the infrastructure everywhere. So that's, I think, the AIB, Silk Road Fund, the Belt and Road is really concerned about.
So we want to make sure that every project we finance is going to deliver a real economic benefit in terms of the sustainable development of the country. Obviously, we look at the finances. The project needs to be bankable. It needs to be financially well constructed. But then also we have a number of safeguards in place to look after the environment, to look after the interests of local people, to make sure that when the project is being implemented, it's not doing unnecessary damage to the environment, that that is being managed and that the project is as green as possible. That where local people are affected, for example, sometimes people have to move to make way for a project, that those people are looked after and treated in the right way. Those are, I think, widely accepted international standards for how projects should be financed. And for the AIB, it's those policies and those tests that we care about before we decide whether or not we can provide money to help pay for a new infrastructure project anywhere in Asia.
President Xi Jinping's call for building a community with a shared future for humankind has built an international consensus supported by many countries, organizations, and political parties. It exemplifies China's vision for a more just, equitable, secure, and prosperous world.
Building a community of a shared future for mankind needs a new major power relationship, a new state-to-state relationship. So how do we build a peaceful and prosperous world? For China, the Belt and Road Initiative serves as the best practice to foster a community of a shared future for mankind. With the Belt and Road project, many countries can enjoy the express train of China's fast growth, as China's capital, products, and infrastructure are exported to those countries, and eventually facilitating the industrialization and modernization drives of those countries. For many developing countries, they are as desperate for industrialization and modernization as we were in the 1980s and 90s. However, they failed to find a path of reinforcing industrialization, modernization, and urbanization due to various historical reasons. China, I think, has set a good example for them. Tangible benefits would be brought to them by enabling policy coordination, facilities connectivity, unimpeded trade, financial integration, and a person-to-person bond through the Belt and Road Initiative.
It is hard to overstate the importance of President Xi's Belt and Road Initiative for the developing world, for the entire world. That's why I focus on its concerns and challenges. Concerns such as lack of transparency, excessive debt, improper business practices, environmental degradation, and overanxious officials too quick to tout success. Challenges include financial structure, political instability, cultural misunderstandings, nationalism, and terrorism. Only by addressing and anticipating problems can success be optimized. In his keynote speech at the Second Belt and Road Summit, President Xi did just that, calling for open, green, and clean approaches, meaning transparent, environmental friendly, and not corrupt, and high-standard sustainable development, meaning financially viable with manageable debt. Debt burdens are prompting China to rebalance lending practices. Chinese companies now need to demonstrate that their projects are viable, which means at a minimum that the debt is manageable and the local population can afford costs such as electricity for power plants and tickets for railways. Notwithstanding reports in foreign media, burdening host countries with excessive debt is not China's strategy. It may be in the illicit interests of a few companies and local officials, but it is not at all in China's interests. Authorities are now toughening standards and tightening controls. That's why I deem it a positive sign that investments declined in 2017 and 2018. These are mid-course corrections, and China is especially good at making them. That's why China's 4 decades of reform and opening up was astonishingly successful. Start with bold experimental projects. See what works and what doesn't work. Make changes and roll it out further. Long-term success depends on planning, structuring, and operating projects with highest standards of analysis, monitoring, and controls. Belt and Road offers grand phrases to support its grand vision. Extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits. Win-win cooperation, and a shared future for all humanity. These exhortations are called golden principles, but I worry that wooden repetition by local officials could serve to dull their impact and undermine Belt and Road projects. These principles cannot be meaningless mantras or fluffy cheerleading. Experts should examine cases where these principles do not work, not just praise cases where they do work. Candid honesty reduces suspicion and catalyzes success. The Belt and Road Initiative is vital for the world. It must be represented properly to be closer to China.